Welcome back to class, everybody. It's a beautiful day in our bloody sandy neighborhood. Today's topic is blunt weaponry, as you can see by our wonderful teaching aids. I've got myself strapped up with a few, so let's kick it off with what's on the table. Moving our way down the row, they'll show you what I got, and we'll go into a live demonstration. First up, oh, one of them disappeared. A few of my teaching aids actually disappeared. I guess I spawned in just a tad too many. That is okay though. That is okay. We will fix that. There you are. Boop. All right. So the topic of today is blunt force weaponry. Things that were not meant to cut or to sever or to pierce, but were simply meant to inflict damage through the heaviest armor with sheer concussive force. Now, oftentimes these weapons were employed not to kill, but simply to render a foe unconscious for easier capture. In the case of the Cassidus and the Blackjack here. Now these were a wonderful invention by gladiatorial fighters who would wear it on their knuckles, allowing them to punch harder than their actual fist would allow. Not only that, but they were wonderful for, say, bounty hunters who needed to go up against an opponent who really might have been stronger than them. Good few jabs of the gut, crack into the face, big boys out like a light. Another great weapon for knocking people unconscious, the Blackjack. It's a decent handle with a very heavy end here for a swift strike to the back of the head. That would knock them forward, making them, concussing them, knocking them unconscious. Here we've got one of our classic axes, and you're like, but Jake, that's an axe. That's going to chop right through, or it's going to poke. But this back end, these divots here, were actually so that one could strike that into the armor, and it would indent, or crack the plate mail worn by your opponents, or simply deliver force through, because all the weight that's on this axe head coming down this way is on the same end going this way. That weight's not going to be lighter just because you're swinging the other end. So instead of a broad blade, you're using a small hammer to smack on through that. Here we've got ourselves a wooden mallet, oftentimes used by carpenters, driving nails, but in times of need, a wonderful weapon to crack someone over the head with. Same with a blacksmith's hammer, strong enough to literally flatten steel, definitely strong enough to flatten a skull. Here we've got a leaden mallet used by, again, construction workers. It has its little chisel bottom here, but definitely that solid head there getting right through armor. Now, a lot of these weapons were used out of necessity. So this bad boy, usually used out of necessity, used for capture, gladiatorial combat, or street fights, pit fights, and used by crusaders to take out plate mail opponents if they didn't believe the axe blade could make it through. Moving on to some genuine weapons of war. First up, a returning fan favorite, our something hammer. Still don't know how to pronounce it. A beautiful weapon created by the Germans. Spike on one end for piercing the armor, or this coffin-shaped hammerhead on the other for cracking down into the armor and just delivering bone-breaking, rib-crashing, lung-collapsing force straight into the body. We've got ourselves a Morning Star, and I hear you saying, Jake, that's piercing damage. Look at all the spikes. Yes, but the spikes are nothing without the weight driving them. And that weight is what made the Morning Star a wonderful weapon. Yes, it is more on the pen spectrum of blunt weaponry, but it's using that same concussive force to drive these spikes. These spikes alone would not guarantee a kill against the body. They'd guarantee bleeding, but it's the weight pushing it through the armor that really makes this thing stand out as a mace. Great hammers. Great hammers are far more common on the battlefield in the hands of pullmen trying to take out knights who are on horseback. Because when that knight is riding at you, all right, you swing this, collide with his chest, that is going to dent his plate mail so hard that you'll probably be able to make both sides touch. You also have this deadly spike on the other end for in case you want to hit and then pull him down once you have that spike buried into his chest. You can rip him off his horse, or again, just slam him off of it. Now, there is another form of great hammer, which is the maul. This type of maul, though, was not used in a battlefield like that one. These mauls were actually used to batter down doors. Now, as you can tell by the symbology on this one, this is a Norse maul, all right? These were used to knock down monastery doors. That way you could get to loot inside. They were used to knock down village walls. Anything you needed to batter down, that's battering it down. Now, there is another one made by the Japanese, which has a bit more of a comical head to it. Granted, this was made out of wood, while that is made of metal, but that massive hunk of... did not mean to grab you. We will get to you in time. This massive hunk of wood definitely going to have enough force to cave in the lamellar armor the samurai wore, or to batter down the wooden gates they built to keep out invaders. This hammer's weight did not come from its construction, but merely from sheer dummy thick size. And it is one of the ones I'm going to use in our live demonstration here against some actual plate mail wearing enemies. Moving on, the quarterstaff. Yes, the furled quarterstaff. This was essentially just a long stick with metal caps on the end that allowed one to wield it in both hands for swift strikes coming in and around, or to choke way down on it and get a lot of momentum on one end. Essentially, think of a bow staff used by the Japanese, very similar concept. These were often used as walking sticks by monks in Japan and in England after the Viking raids became incredibly common. Monks were often seen walking with these metal cap staves as it would protect them, because now they had something that could deal some damage to a Viking, you know? And more often than not, your opponent was left alive, because while they were concussed, they generally weren't dead, which meant that the monks were not violating their never gonna kill a person rule. This is one of the most classic forms of mace you'll ever see, just a simple ball mace. Now this one is the Byzantine mace, because this is a bronze ball head. And this type of mace was very common in the Byzantine Empire when cuirasses of bronze were becoming incredibly common. They were moving away from padded armor, away from flax armor, and onto bronze armor. They needed something that could crack through that shell, which the mace became incredibly good at for a very long time. This is an Iberian mace. This was made by the same people that gave us the falcata, which I'm going to whip out really quick for you guys while I talk about this. So this mace, as you can see, is a bar of metal studs instead of just a simple ball at the end, a simple set weight like many of our other maces. This one is a bar, increasing our surface area, meaning that it's harder to miss. So yes, here, an ancient Iberian sword. Yeah, boop. There we go. These two weapons were made by the... gotcha! These two weapons were made by the same people who were next level iron and steel forgers. And this mace, because of its large size, meant that it was a nightmare to the Greek hoplites that wanted to do... My Castius just disappeared because I summoned this, didn't it? Oh well. To Brazil with you. Anywho, this bar mace, well, this isn't a bar mace, but it's close to a bar mace. It did a lot of damage over a larger surface area, meaning that while the weight wasn't as direct, it was a lot harder to miss. Because if I have this Byzantine mace here, and my depth perception's off, and I hit with the shaft, I'm not doing a lot of damage. But this, see, that swing almost missed, but because of the length of the head, I've got a lot easier chance of hitting with that heavy weight part than I do the Byzantine one. So yeah, larger head, easier to hit with. Finally, we're going on to the definition of massive fucking head, the kanabo. This weapon was made by the Japanese for the sole purpose of cracking shields wielded by the Chinese and the Philippines and their other opponents, as well as being able to smash through the thickest lamellar armor. See, towards the end of the Age of Samurai, they started making bulletproof armor, which literally would have dents in it from where a bullet hit it to prove it was bulletproof. This is going to be able to bear down the weight on these little knobs, this massive hunk of metal cracking and crushing even that bulletproof thick mail, meaning that the samurai inside, maybe a brushing off musket shots, would not be able to withstand the sheer force of this. Not to mention his armor is heavy enough. You inflict enough extra weight on top of that, his legs are going to buckle, he'll fall down. Because of the weight of his armor, he won't be able to get up. He'll be easy enough to finish just by drawing a wakizashi and stabbing him in the face. So yes, the kanabo was a dreaded weapon. It, again, much like the maul, was also used to not only batter down that kind of stuff, but to also break down doors and stuff like that whenever one of these was not available. Although the best thing about the kanabo is that it was once rumored to be the weapon of choice by the Oni, massive, burly, buff demons that patrolled Japan's less frequented areas. Anywho, now we're going to move on to what I'm packing, which is the ox mace, because I love these ornamental weapons. It's a beautiful head of solid bronze, topping a long enough staff that I'm going to get some serious whack with that. Plus, it is also a work of art, meaning that it is both beautiful to look at and beautiful to use. On my hips, I've got a bar mace, a true bar mace. This is these are not blades. They're not. They're fullers. Much like on our, I forgot you, didn't I? So these little lines spiraling up the top of this are called fullers. Now this one, unlike all these other weapons, actually has a handguard here with a spike and a spike that I have used before to inflict some good damage. This is a wonderful dedicated weapon. Oh, I grabbed it by the spike. There we go. This is a wonderful dedicated weapon. So unlike these, which would be a secondary weapon used against a armored opponent, this is a definite primary. Somebody is carrying this into battle, knowing that this will be the weapon they use against everyone they come across. The fullers channel the weight of the weapon into a fine line, allowing its incredible heft to crack through that armor just a little bit easier than if it was a flat piece. And because of their spiral pattern, if they bend or dent, they're not going to get in the way of the other ones. They're just going to lay down in those gaps. But it's going to be harder for them to bend and dent because of the curve. Now, it's flat on top, meaning you can't really stab with it, but that's just fine. These are not about stabbing. These are about the whacking. The definite heft coming in with a good handguard. Oh, it's one of my favorite maces. Anywho, back to the bar mace. These are fullers, much like on that bad boy, that channel the force into those little bars. Now, what I like about the bar mace is that you can wield it very similar to just a heavy sword, swinging in, coming in a lot like any other kind of club, except the entirety of its body is a viable whacking point, unlike most of these maces where you just want to hit with the end. Someone with bad depth perception like me, this is our go-to for bludgeoning somebody, because it does it beautifully for someone who's more trained with a sword like myself than with a mace or an axe. On my other hip, I've got my second favorite kind of, or I guess third, because it would go 1, 2, 3. The classic prinarch. This one calls it a flanged mace, but it is a prinarch, which was a symbol of authorita. Respect it. So if I choke up here a bit, we've got a tiny point on top, not enough to really inflict any damage, but definitely if you can get into the flesh, that's going to inflict a wound that'll make somebody go, ah, fuck my arm, or ah, fuck my eyes, you know. But again, all about these flangs carrying the weight of the mace down into a steady whomp. Oh, it's beautifully done. Solid wood handle does mean that it could get sliced. If the opponent had a strong enough swing with like an axe, it could go right through my handle. That's another reason why I like one of those, or, you know, why I like my bar mace. They can't chop through it. So yeah, has a few drawbacks, as all maces do. The construction of the mace is highly important. But these were not defensive weapons. Much like an axe, these were not meant to block. All right, these were meant to be swung on the offense, wielded with some form of shield as our defense. So definitely got myself one of those. All right, that covers all my classic bases. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna summon a 1-1-1 kind of thing. The 1v1's constants, but I'm gonna go knights melee only. I don't want any wizards coming running at me. We're gonna start off with my massive freaking hammer here. There you are. I'm gonna go right through that shield. Oh, he advanced on me quick. Boom, though, and he's down. Now hold on. I just realized I don't have infinite focus. I got a little carried away here. Hit it. There we go. And boom, I'm about to get hit. Yep. All right, let's slow down time. Boom. Boom! All right, let's quickly close in on him. You can see the dents in his armor. Boom! Look at that. It just caves in his armor. Even though that is solid metal. I'm just cracking down through it. A good hit to the head. She done. Boom! Now, because she's wearing chainmail, that has nothing to absorb the massive weight of this hammer. Moving on to the Ox Mace, a weapon a little lighter. Oh, you can see the dents. Boom, it's a bit more responsive because it's lighter. But look at that. Look at it dent up that plate. Dent up the helmet. You can easily see how something like this would be very effective against a knight in full plate. Once your head's ringing like a bell, boom. That constant pressure on the skull is going to do some lasting damage. Hit him with the back of it. Boom, hit him with those horns. And you just cave in the armor. They're a lot more brutal. Definitely. Bludgeons are a lot more of a brutal weapon because you can't look. Oh, see, she's coming at me with a mace. Boom, done. Boom. It's a lot more of a brutal weapon because you can't just like slit a throat with it. Now I'm going to show the stabby potential. Not a lot. Probably not going to kill anybody with it. See? They're just little jabs to open them up for the big hit. Now what he brought out was what the game actually calls a prinarch. Yep, prinarch. Which again, looks like a crown to show its symbol of authority. Boom, boom, boom. Now he's got a good defense, so I'm just gonna come in here swinging. The Mace's greatest ability is its ability to knock shields out of the way, as well as pen that armor. They're so heavy that when they clash upon that shield, they knock the shield down, allowing for a follow-up hit. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, bam. All right, moving on to my last weapon. Actually, I'm going to put you back on my hip. My last weapon of the day, the bar mace. Very, very sword-like in its construction. So if he swings at me, I can actually block with this one and then come back and encounter. And the reason I can block with it is because, again, solid construction of the handle, or of the shaft here. All metal all day. So he swings. Bing! Block it off that. I can thrust with that blunt end. Again, not going to do a lot of damage with that. But it is enough to kind of get his guard up. Get him trying to block it. As I batter down on that. There's spikes right there I could probably hit him into. So he swings. Oh, he swung low. Boom! Across the head. Boom! Back. He's down, despite his thick armor. She comes in. Oh, I had that blocked. Bing, bing, boom. Cracking skulls, just to make sure. I think she's still alive. Eh. There we go. So yeah, that's today's lesson. All about them blunt weaponry. Get back to the book. Boop. Freeze. You've committed crimes against Skyrim Menace people. Ah. Just throw it at her. Ah. 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 I guess that's one part about blunt weaponry you never really hear is like the ability to like wing it at somebody because it's so heavy. If it does hit them with the head, that's gonna really knock somebody back. Unlike a sword, which isn't as heavy, you'd have to throw it point first to do any damage. If you just wing one of these, you're essentially just throwing a giant rock at somebody. That's gonna hurt. Just bonk. Yeah, that's not gonna feel good. I'm gonna wrap up real quick with one more show of what makes maces so amazing, or just really any blunt weaponry. Boom, the cudgel. Classic Irish cudgels are called shillelaghs. They were infamous for being able to take out the British, even in their armor, just by taking a ball of lead, putting it in a tree stump, letting the tree grow around it, and chopping it off. This kind of cudgel here, before the Stone Age, there was only wood, man. Maces and other types of clubs, like those made of bone, have been around for centuries before we had any even kind of armor. And that is because blunt force trauma is not something that only the armored opponent can suffer from. Whether you're in leather, whether you're in chainmail, plate mail, whether you're nude, blunt force trauma is going to hurt when it hits you. All right, that's gonna hurt. Because while he's wearing plate, or if he was wearing plate, yes, the impact's reduced, but that doesn't mean it's negated. It's still a lot of force hitting someone in the head. Without that, his skull is kind of absorbing what the plate would be absorbing, and his skull is going to crack. So yeah, blunt weaponry are definitely the king of weapons, in my opinion, because there is little to... Do you have no shame? There. Because there is no armor today that can completely negate concussive force. None. We have armor that can completely stop piercing, that can completely stop cutting, but we have nothing that exists, even with all of our modern technology, that can completely negate concussive force to the human body. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Class dismissed.